Hello there and welcome back as we continue on this kind of introductory primer to Polygon modeling before we really get into the character modeling portion of the class. Now, the next thing I want to do is go over some of the big, important primary tools that I think everybody should know about before they tackle any modeling project. Now, all of these you can dig up the documentation for if you really want to. I am not going to go over every single modeling tool available inside of Blender. The big reason for that is that a lot of the ones that are there, I generally don't use them. There's really only a handful. Well, there's a lot that I use, but some that I use significantly more than others, and some that I think are nice to know just in case you ever find yourself needing them. But a few of them are so edge case that I either know of another way to do it or I just don't bother with them. So anyway, so that's what I want to do here is I want to go over some of the tools that I want you to be aware of. One of these, probably the most basic that I think I ever use, is the loop cut tool. Now, even with even now that we have BMesh, even now that we can create N-Gons, and we are no longer forced to only create loops whenever we need to add geometry, it is still extremely nice to be able to do this. And this is using CTRL+R. Now here's how this works. CTRL+R starts off by putting you into insert edge loop mode, and then as you mouse over various edges, you will get an edge loop that is perpendicular to whatever edge you are currently mousing over. Now, once you are in this mode, you can roll your mouse wheel up and down to control how many edges you want to add. So if you want to do a lot of subdivisions in a single dimension, this is how you do it. Later on, I'll show you guys Subdivide, which you've seen up to this point, especially if you went through the 101 class. We use that to subdivide our ground. But I've actually received questions from people going like, I really like the Subdivide tool, but I don't know how to subdivide in one direction and not another. And so you end up in a situation where you don't want to use Subdivide, you want to use CTRL+R. Now, yeah, it's very nice. Annie just asked if I'm using the same press as in 101. I was actually going to go over preferences before I started doing this, and then I forgot. So I'll go over preferences here in just a second. But anyway, so CTRL+R, again, it inserts an edge loop, and then you're going to click your mouse. Now, if you haven't let go of your mouse, if you're actually holding it down, you can drag this edge to precisely where you want it to go. And that's important to know as well, because sometimes you won't want to put it dead center. You'll want to offset it, put it up here, down there. You can drag it wherever you want it to be and then click, and that will finalize the operation. Or if I undo that and put in one more, if you want it to be dead center and you don't want to move your mouse to that point, just right click and that'll put it at the dead center. So definitely be aware of that. Now, you can, Gav, why don't you throw in one more? I would hate to accidentally end up on a roll or something where I'm actually getting a lot done. It'd be great for you to be my speed bump and go ahead and throw me off. So what do you got for me, Gav?
Oh, well, in order to fulfill that, yes, if you go into that and don't complete it again, you can punch in numbers for percentage.
That's true.
Either way, I think it's -1 or -100.
So something like 0.5, or 0.4, or 0.3, or 0.2, or 0.1. So yeah, you can actually punch in numbers. Very good, Gav. Thank you so much, Gavin. That was excellent. Yeah. All right. I do want to mention something about my user preferences. Really, I try not to change that many of them, but some people have absolute heart attacks. Like, seriously, writhing and flip-flopping on the ground because I change a few of them. The only ones that I am changing, really, is I've turned on continuous grab, and that's just a minor preference. That means nothing, really. And I select with left mouse because right mouse selection is annoying. Of course, that's just my opinion. So really, that's the only change that I have made, is that I use left mouse selection. All right, so let's see. Now, with that out of the way, now, of course, using CTRL+R to add in edge loops is only one small part of the process. Now, some of the things that I do like to use, of course, we probably all know about extruding by now. Tap the E key and you are extruding. Now you have a couple of other things as well that kind of go along with this. If I undo, you can grab multiple faces, and if you hit E, you're going to go along their average normal, which is why I'm kind of shooting out here at this diagonal direction. If, however, I hit Alt-E, you get this little window that pops up, little menu. You can choose to extrude the region or individual faces. So if I do individual faces, you get this. So for those of you who need to make individual extrusions, you can do that. Now, a couple of other big ones. I kind of have a list here of the ones that I often use, and I'm not really showing them in any order other than, well, other than what makes the most sense to me at the time. Let me throw this one out there. Let's say I've got a really interesting shape that looks something like this. I don't know why it looks like this, but this is what it looks like. You do have the ability to slide edges, and I really wish that certain other applications also had this as well. I won't mention what those applications are. But when you have an edge selected, you can hit Control-E, and this is true of every single one of your components. As long as you're not using the Maya hotkey layout, please let me repeat myself when I say that. If for some reason you've gone into the user preferences and you have taken your primary keys and you've set them to Maya for some reason, you can't do what I'm about to show you. That is that when you have edges selected, you can hit Control-E and you'll have a nice list of various commands that you can perform on edges, which is very nice. You can hit Control-V and you'll get a list of things you can do to vertices. And you can hit Control-F and get a list of things you can do to faces. You see how that works? Edges, faces, vertices, E, F, V. And now you can also hit the W key and that'll bring up some special commands as well. So definitely be aware of those hotkeys. So Control-E, F, and V for edges, faces, and vertices respectively. And remember the W key, which will bring up a menu as well. What you got for me, Gav? Yes, exactly. You changed your mind at the end. Probably was a good call. And then I ruined that for you. And then, yeah. Yeah, and then I ruined that for you. So I do want to mention, though, that, and somebody did mention that Control-Tab is important, and we've kind of already covered that. You do need the ability to switch between your various types of component, which the fastest way that I generally do that is with Control-Tab, and then I just use V, E, or F. So like if I need vertices, like Control-Tab-V, or if I need faces, Control-Tab-F, and you get that really quickly.
There is a gotcha with that, though, which is if you are not in sub-object mode, I can't remember what it's called.
If you're not in edit mode.
Yeah. And hit Control-Tab, it will push you to one of the other edit modes, and it can really freak you out because everything will go blue.
Right. So just make sure you're in edit mode before you start trying to jump between your various types of components, and you'll probably be okay. Okay, so you just saw edge slide. I can hit Control-E, and for instance, you'll see edge slide here. And this just allows you to move detail around without necessarily changing the shape of your object. Very, very nice when you happen to need that. Some of the bigger ones that I like to use quite a bit, actually. Of course, we've already seen extrusion. I've already talked about remove doubles. Unfortunately, there's no major hotkey for that, and you're going to find this with a lot of these various operations. If you can't remember where they are, just please remember the space bar, so that you can just tap the space bar and just start typing out what you need. Sometimes you don't even have to know what you need. You can just kind of start guessing. So tap space bar and be like, I need to, let's see, was it double? I know it's something doubles. And look, remove doubles is the first thing that comes up. So, and somebody just said, enable screencast, please. All right, well, I guess I can do that. Preferences. Oh, I guess it got switched off over here for some reason. There you go. So now you can watch me hit all of my buttons over and over again. So the next tool, let's see, that I really want to point out, we've already actually covered some of the big ones. Let's talk about some of the tools that are specific to the BMesh. Because really, a lot of the tools that have been here for a while, hopefully at this point you've seen enough of them that you're able to make some basic shapes. You've already extruded, you've added some edge loops here and there. You may have merged some vertices with Alt-M, but let's talk a little bit more about the BMesh specific ones. Yes, Gavin? They're not that I'm aware of. If they have a slice plane, I haven't been told about it. All right, so let's start off with the knife tool, which we already kind of talked about, but let's kind of talk a little more specifically about it. The knife tool is huge. You can make entire models using primarily just the knife tool, and you can do that just by hitting the K key. K for knife. Very, very easy to remember. Now, how does the knife tool actually work? Well, as you move your cursor around, you'll notice your cursor turns into a really cool looking little knife icon. You're given a point on your surface where you are going to create a vertex. There's also some highlighting and snapping involved to kind of help you out. If you get close to an edge, you'll notice that edge will get highlighted and you'll be snapping along that edge. You can left click and drop down a vertex, and then your next vertex that you add will have an edge connected back to it. So we could make a series of edges that walk all the way along here to the far corner. When you are done, when you are happy with the cuts that you've made, you don't have to end here either. We could continue along the underside of the object if we just really wanted to. But when you're happy, you press enter and that cut will be complete. I am going to say this tool is still very new. And when I say that, what I'm kind of getting at is that there are occasionally instances where while you're working with it, it may lose track of exactly what you clicked on. It may get a little problematic. And that's the K key to bring up the knife tool. Very easy to remember. Knife, K. The problem with it is sometimes if you're making a very, very long edge and you're rotating around your model a lot, it can get a little finicky. So I would highly recommend you keep your cuts minimal and press enter a lot to make sure that you get everything that you needed to be cut. Now you can also, if you want, you can cut across multiple edges as you see here. And you can also tap the space bar and that will end your command as well. So enter or space, they both do the same thing. So you'll notice here, because I clicked each one by one, it's kind of erratic. But here, because I cut through all of them at once, we have a nice straight line. Extremely useful. You can't really say enough about how amazing this tool is.
Now, if do you have to end up on an edge, or will it autocomplete if you...
No. Well, here, check it out. Check it out. If we click, we can make, because of N-Gons, essentially, we have the ability to do things like this. And it auto-completes to the last edge you crossed.
Okay. Oh, that's a sensible way of
yeah.
Much better
than like Max, which reaches out to the nearest...
Oh, so your name check Max when it's bad, but not my...
Well, you know, I'm just saying. I'm sorry. I forgot I was in the room with somebody who takes Mac stuff really personally. Yeah.
Stick up for Max because no one else uses it.
Right. Well, somebody's got to stick up for it, I guess. All right. So there's the knife tool. Again, you can see you don't have to click right on edges. Generally, however, it's a good idea to. Now, I say generally, and I don't necessarily mean you have to click on edges or even that you should click on edges all the time. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to make a doorway in this wall. Let's assume this is the wall of some sort of a building, and I want to make a doorway. Well, there's a lot of different ways you could go about that, but one way would be to say, all right, well, let's just kind of rough it in. So I can click, 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 and click. And let's see, when I hit the spacebar, there we go. Now, I wouldn't leave this kind of an N-Gon geometry like this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sided thing floating in my scene. I would want to clean it up a little bit, but now I can say from here, we can cut out to this corner, and from here, we can cut out to this corner, and now everything is nice and neat, but all because I was able to really quickly cut in roughly where I wanted that shape to be. Again, it's just also another way to illustrate how N-Gons are useful as a tool, as a means to an end to get where you want to go, and not necessarily as the be-all, end-all of where your geometry should end up. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you drew that door out, if you started, you did your first 4 clicks,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the bridge crossing problem in maths. You've got no way of getting back to that third point in order to do the diagonal without crossing. If you start it again.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're taking a very If you click 2, 3, and then if you want to make that diagonal, I mean, you could click back over here and do it. You can.
Does that add in non-manifold? That will,
because I missed the corner.
Sorry.
I don't even think it liked it that I did that. So I wouldn't even cut it that way, like ever, for any reason.
But that's the point at which you were stuck.
Is it possible to make the knife use straight lines? Well, it only does straight lines, if you think about it that way. It can't do anything other than straight lines. If you No, but it does have this ability, where when you're cutting, if you hold down the control key, you will automatically snap to the center of an edge. And that can really kind of help get you exactly where you want to go. Now, if you're wanting all of your edges to be perfectly aligned with a given axis, that's not really its job. It's not going to be doing that sort of thing. Well, if you absolutely need an edge to be perfectly aligned to a given axis, you'd probably be better just putting it in and then making the necessary adjustments to the vertices if you need to snap them, if you need to take that edge. It says you can do that with C, actually. Okay, well, let's see if I've been wrong before. I mean, wrong again. Dunk-a-dunk-a-dunk.
Oh, I think you hold down C, is it, while you're going?
Well,
that rings a bell when you said that, something about C, but I can't recall it.
I mean, I'm not getting anything really all that particularly different. Oh, there we go. All right. Let me cut from down here. Actually, I seem to recall reading this one place. So yeah, you can, and it's fighting to try to give you a straight line. There you go. So yeah, you can, but it looks like it's kind of screen dependent. So if you wanted to make the most of it, you'd probably want to get out of the tool and switch over to a perfect side view, say like an orthographic, and then you can use your knife tool and then start your cut, and you should get something very straight. I do like seeing it fight you, though. That kind of cracks me up. And then when you're done, of course, you can drop that and rotate around, and it looks like it missed one. Ooh, I should hope not. But this is, again, kind of look, it seemed to cut across there. So, again, the knife tool is pretty new, so expect there to be the occasional little glitch. Okay, so there's a rundown of the knife tool. Absolutely huge. It really does change the way that you model inside of Blender completely, as opposed to having to hit Control-R all the time and insert loops and then start condensing down bits of loops, and because that was just a pain for anybody who ever made a big deal out of having to do that. Okay, now a couple of other things. Let me go ahead and just get out of here.
Apparently, according to Miranda, you don't hold down C.
Oh.
That's why it was toggling, presumably on and off.
Well, then I stand corrected. Won't be the first time today, and probably won't be the last. But to throw that in there just one more time, yeah, you can just tap it to turn it on, and that seems to work reasonably well. Cool. So yeah, you pick something up every time. Alright, so let me show you the one thing that I'm probably most in love with in terms of BMesh. And that is that we can now grab edges. And this really needs its own hotkey, and if it has one, they haven't assigned it that I know of yet, but we finally have the ability to bevel. And if you don't think that's a big deal, then you just haven't done a whole lot of modeling yet, and that's okay. But the idea is that we can control a percentage of this bevel, and we can control how many subdivisions it's actually going to get. So if we want to, we can continue to bevel that out and start to really create some nice rounding. Now, if you end up in a situation where you are creating a model that has super hard edges, definitely remember the bevel tool. Like, let's say for some reason you need a cube, you know. Maybe you're creating a 3D model that's going to go into a game engine, or maybe it's going to be in a render. Remember that super hard edges do not exist in the real world, and that you will want to clean those up in some way. And bevel is probably going to be the easiest way to clean them up. If you just take one tiny little bit of bevel, even just this much, and that's all, this will make all the difference in a render from making all of your objects appear more realistic. Now, go ahead, please.
The difference is enormous just because it picks up specular highlights and things like that, but it really does kick out.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime that you know there's going to be a hard edge facing the viewer in any form, it's a good idea to bevel that and make sure that it's not seen. Now, it is visible under the W key underneath specials, so make sure that you are aware of that. It doesn't have a hotkey yet. You can probably make one for it, but I'm always afraid of making hotkeys because then I start using them and people start screaming. So definitely get used to using bevels, especially if you're making harder surfaces that need to be smoothed out, if they need to look more realistic while you're working. A couple of other things I do want to mention before I completely move away from some of the tool demos. And please, if you have any questions about some of these tools, or if you need a reminder on some of them, please make sure you throw a question into the question system.
I did have one other thing on beveling, which is just keep an eye on your polygon.
That's true, because you...
Very easy to crank it through the roof.
Yeah, you can really kick your polygon count way high. Now, let's see here. When creating a bevel, you can increase the subdivisions of that bevel. And I don't actually remember how to do that right off the top of my head.
Sorry, what were you trying to do?
Increase the subdivisions of a bevel. I wanted to say that it was actually in the tools. No. Oh, now you can do it manually just by adding another bevel. If you're wondering how I did it previously, I just added a second bevel. I wanted to say that at one point you had the ability to add that in as one of the settings, but that might have just been one of the things that I was playing with a long time ago. Now, what you can do is once you have this, we could say we could bevel again. Now, in this case, it created all kinds of stuff there, because the corners look a little funny. Right, you had all those corners. So
you would want to do a subdividing instead, surely.
Right. Well, like in this case, what I did previously was I created a bevel here, and then I pulled down the percentage to about there, and then basically just run another bevel, and then pull the percentage down a little more. And there you go. So I was manually adding additional subdivisions. So there you go. Now, usually, I will mention this. More often than not, I don't end up beveling entire shapes all at once, but that's usually just due to the nature of a lot of the models that I end up working with. Like, I'll bevel all in one direction and then worry about what happens in the other direction. Now, if you do have a corner, it is nice to be able to bevel all at once and create a nice corner, like so. But just be aware of the difference between the algorithm here, in that as you start to move away, notice we have shorter edges on one side, so you end up with this kind of pinching effect. So you'll want to.
I tend to take the opposite approach. I will crease things while I'm working, and then I will bevel all my creased edges in one huge blast at the end.
Yeah.
It's just I've found for me that workflow results in fewer occasions where then I immediately find a row of edges that I missed.
Right. Okay, so one other tool that I want to mention that is new to BMesh is the ability to inset faces. So if I switch over to faces here, they did put this under the specials menu, so if you hit W, it's there. And this gives you the ability to take a face and create an inset version of it. You can also check outset, and that will outset it away in the opposite direction. Now, of course, in this case, you see that it's moving down the geometry. So switch off outset.
Is this, now I remember this used to be rather picky about, you would end up with some odd non-planarity.
I haven't run into any such problems using this, if that answers your question. So it just allows you to create a quick inset that you could then extrude from if you need to simulate some thickness. Okay, so now I did get a question. How are you going to resolve beveling corners? I'm not sure what you mean. Can you be a little more clear?
I think he's concerned about the triangles from something you said earlier, but actually, well...
The triangles that appear there are really just the nature of the bevel, and because there's not... because we don't have a multi-iteration of that bevel going on, then that's just kind of the way that that's the nature of it.
If you were entering some bizarre technical quiz for modeling and everything had to be chords, you could solve that problem by dividing some of the bevels into, thus making triangles, two triangles into, join two of the triangles together, and you'll get... and you'll get quads.
You meant adding subdivisions to the corners.
Well, no, to the edges, to every other edge in between. You see what I mean?
No. No, I'm afraid I don't.
If you did it to every edge, it wouldn't help.
Well,
You can quad out the triangles. Anyway.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at. Now, I did get another question. Is there any difference between bevel in edit mode and bevel in the modifiers, except the modifier affecting the entire model? That is the primary thing, is that the bevel modifier does bevel every single edge on your model, where this is selective. You can actually say, I want to bevel this edge and not that edge. And Mohammed, I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. You meant adding subdivisions to the corners. You could manually add those edges if that's what you're getting at. But I mean, in that case, you'd be using the knife tool or making an adjustment manually on your end.
The thing is, generally speaking, that isn't going to be a problem because, well, they're corners. And the reason that you avoid triangles, even if you're going to smooth this for ultra high detail, the problem with triangles is that they cause holes in the smoothing. They cause points to occur.
Pinching.
Yeah, pinching, that's the word. But I've been doing too much programming. But that's what you want at a corner.
Right. Okay, so that's kind of a rundown of the major tools that I use. Now, obviously, there are several other tools that we'll be kind of going over and touching on while we go about the modeling process. What I want to do here is I want to kind of break away and create a model. I'm actually just going to go through the modeling process. It's going to be very much kind of on the fly, where I'll just be building something, and you're welcome to follow along, or you're welcome to kind of take notes about the process that I'm using. You're welcome to ask any questions that you like while I'm working about why I'm doing this and not that, and I will answer as best I'm able. How do you get back to the operation once you went out of this? For instance, if you inset face and you go to object mode to see how it looks, then back to options and adjust the thickness of the inset, it doesn't work that way. Blender is not happy about you saving a current operation that you're doing. That's something else that I think they're going to... I mean, I would like it if they worked on it, but there's no construction history or similar inside of Blender. So for instance, if I do like an inset face and I adjust the thickness, and then I get out of edit mode and go into object mode, that's it. I have now left that operation. The only thing I could do at this point, if I needed to change the way that looked, is just start adjusting maybe this inset face. And now, of course, if you have something like a bevel, then you need to undo and redo your bevel. But I mean, in this case, of course, you could just take this face and scale it a little bit and adjust the thickness kind of manually. But you do not have access to that operation itself, and that's what you have to be aware of.
Can you, this is just randomly occurred to me, but could you have another, could you split it to another 3D view that you left in object mode, or would it switch at the same time?
I'm sorry, can you say again?
If you split your view
Uh-huh.
and had another 3D viewport, would you leave one in object mode, or would they both switch as you...
Yeah, I've never tried that. I imagine they would both go over into edit mode because that should be...
Well, you get a separate T and N menus.
No, I mean, worst I can do is just give it a...
I wondered.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the worst I could do is just give it a try. But actually, let me handle that another time. Now, what Mohammed came back with, he said, I meant in Maya you could add subdivisions to bevels even when there are corners. It works well. In Blender, you could bevel a corner only once. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's because Blender just got beveling, and right now its beveling is very simple. Right now it just works off of a single iteration. And so that's kind of what you get. If you wanted to add additional iterations, you're just going to have to understand that that's probably going to do horrible things to your corners. Now, one thing that you can try, and I don't know how well this would work. I'm thinking out loud right now. You could, let's see. You'd probably have to do a lot of work manually, one way or the other. But I'm making this up as I go, so if it starts to look really weird, then you're kind of warned in advance.
If you subdivide all of the edge and corners, faces now, i.e. everything except the 6 primary faces, assuming the triangles come to a point in the middle, that would give that puts a hexagon corners that you can then turn into 3 quads.
No, it's still going to look like... Now, you want to try that again, Gavin? What were you saying?
Okay, deselect, do the bevel.
Okay.
And then deselect your main 6 faces, but select all the other faces, all the new faces.
Okay. And then subdivide these?
Yeah.
And that's going to give you some nice division.
The triangles done.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't see. That's done it all in triangles in the middle. That, if you now delete those 4 tiny triangles, you're left with a hexagon. Mm-hmm. So you can quad that into...
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Quads.
Yeah.
It's a hexagon.
Oh, you're okay. You're still hung up on trying to get that into away from triangles. I see what you're saying. I think what it turned out Mohammed was really getting at is the ability to add more iterations to a bevel and still have nice corners. And you could do that if the bevel operation, which again, you have to remember the bevel tool is still kind of in an infancy state. It's brand new. If there was a bevel iteration option here inside the bevel itself, and they had that as part of the actual calculation, then you'd be good to go. Because what you end up needing, what you need is, like, if you add more divisions, you need this corner to remain rounded, just like it does in Maya or Max. Max's chamfer is gorgeous for that sort of thing. But you just don't have that here because this is a single iteration. And Miranda's letting me know that bevel iteration is coming down the pipeline real soon, and it is in the preview. I think I remember playing with it in the preview, and I lose track of what I saw in the preview and what I saw actually in real Blender. But right now, all you get is a single iteration bevel. And trust me, a single iteration bevel will take you a long way over not having anything at all.
Because bear in mind, if you then smooth this...
It won't look bad. In fact...
Because of how small most bevels, when you're beveling for this purpose rather than just to divide up at all, when you're actually doing it for the purpose of making not infinitely thin corners, if you're only looking for a mil or two's chamfer anyway. If you're then subdividing, 2 or 3 iterations.
There you go. You can already see the...
Quite a lot of detail in there.
Yeah, you can see those nice corners coming out. And let's see, if you're doing a dining table, you have to manually smooth it then. Well, you can see, like in this case, I just took a cube and I gave it a bevel just at the corners. There's just that one iteration of bevel. Here's what it looked like. And then when you add a subdivision surface to it, this is what the corners start to do. This is the type of corner that we're used to seeing in programs such as 3ds Max and Maya. They'll just do that for us. With Blender, you've got to kind of stack a subdivision surface on it. Now, later on, as they start to add more features to BMesh, you should end up with the ability to increase the number of iterations of a bevel, and then you'll be able to handle geometry like this without having to reach for a subdivision surface modifier. But that's coming. That's later on down the road. Okay, so... at this point, again, what do you have, Gav?
So I'm quite prepared to be shut down with this, but I would say that any model where you're chamfering, again, for these edges, is essentially going to be, should probably be a star model, particularly for smoothing it as well. Therefore, you are going to be smoothing it. You're almost certain to be smoothing it if you're showing a model that close in that much detail. Oh,
I see what you're saying. What Gavin's getting at is if you need this kind of detail, it's probably because you're going to need to be smoothing it anyway because you're going to be getting really, really close to it. Yeah. Okay. So with that done, what I want to do is create a model. I'm going to build something out. Now, again, while I'm doing this, I am going to just be working. I will try to call out the basics of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. If for some reason along the way you need a specific question answered, if you're curious about how I'm doing something or anything about my approach, don't be shy. Just chime into the question system. Gavin, if you don't mind, keep an eye on the questions for me in case I get too caught up in modeling to look over there and you can let me know that somebody has a question. Okay, I also want to mention, between now and the end of class, I may or may not have time to complete this model, but we'll at least get far enough along where you'll know what I'm creating, because in the end, it's going to have something to do with your assignment. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my 3D cursor, and I'm going to zero out its position and put it right back in the world. There's a couple of different ways to do that. I just took the long, slow way, which is to tap the N key. And we'll hit Shift-A. Now, when you're modeling out in polygons, you've got to start out with some sort of a polygon object. There are a couple of different approaches to this. You can start off with just a plane and start pulling out edges and start moving around vertices and start adding geometry to a plane and basically turn that into anything you want. I often will do that. And there's also box modeling. Maybe you've heard the term box modeling in your various travels. What that basically means is you start out with a box, and your box is your initial piece of geometry from which you will be extruding and adding in all of the detail you'll need to create whatever it is you want to make. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to create a box, and the very first thing I'm going to do is add a subdivision surface to this box and kick up its view subdivisions a couple of times. Now, if you're working on a machine which is not as powerful as mine, you may want to be a little careful about adding any more than maybe 2 divisions to this. I know I can get away with 3. Actually, I know I can get away with a whole lot more than that on this box. But just be aware on your end that you could end up really slowing things down if you add too many divisions. That's really all you need to be aware of. I'm also going to tell this to be smooth. Now, if I go into edit mode by hitting the tab key, we now get my original geometry and then the smooth result sitting inside of it. And for me, this is a very fun way to work. This makes me very happy. All right. Now, without telling you guys what I'm actually going to be building, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of start working here. So we'll elongate this box by just a little bit. And then I'm going to extrude. Once I have that, I'm going to scale this down just a little bit.
So do I get to play Jason?
If it makes you feel good.
Whereas this is modeling on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, if that makes you feel good, go for it.
I can laugh and point at any errors that I see.
Sure. And we'll just kind of reshape that out. Now let's grab this face back here at the back. Now I am switching between my components very quickly. We're hitting a lot of Control-Tab and then just some letter to switch out. So definitely be aware of that. Let's extrude out, and then I'll scale this down.
I was going to say, for some reason your hotkey display's gone.
Probably because I hit Control N. Let me go ahead and just switch that back on. All right, so we have this really basic shape to kind of get things started. Let's go ahead and just extrude out one more time, just a tiny little extrusion that means almost nothing, and then another one right after that. And we'll scale this one up quite a bit and pull that out. And then extrude out again and scale this down to something kind of like a point. And now we need to start really adjusting some edges.
Two airships mating.
There you go. You figured it out already.
Oh, cool. I have, actually.
What do you think it is?
I think it's something that I've modelled in Houdini.
Oh, well, I don't know what you modeled in Houdini, so...
Oh, well, I modelled it following a tutorial. Who did that then? Did you not do that? Was that Steve Twist?
I never did a Houdini video, if that's what you're asking.
Oh, I think you modelled it for one of the other sets and it was used for the rig.
Now see... no, that's not what I'm making at all. Now see, I'm running into an interesting situation here. Because, you know, I would really like to only work on half of this guy and get the other half just to happen. So we're going to hit Control-R, and I'm going to click, and then I'm just going to right-click, and that'll put a nice split right down the middle of my character. And now I'm just going to hit Z to look through. Let's hit Control-Tab-F, and I'll hit B and drag out a marquee selection box around this half the guy, hit X, delete faces, and that looks like that took care of everybody. And let's drop in another modifier. Let's put on a mirror.
So is this not a spider?
It's not a spider.
I don't believe you.
I'm not asking you to believe me, because that's just the way it is. I'm right, you're wrong, I know what I'm modeling, you don't.
What does he even say that?
It's not a spider, promise. Here, I'll make a couple of changes to make it a little less spider-like, and kind of speed up your comprehension. Hopefully. And let's adjust some rounding here. We'll pull this down a little bit, because, once you add that center edge, you end up with a little bit of flattening that takes place along the sides, and you definitely need to be aware of that. Also, it would be a good idea to make sure that we are mirroring before we are smoothing, so I'm going to move my mirror up the chain. And then we need to do our rounding to the other part of the body. So pull these up, pull those down. You see how it works, so we don't end up with any kind of flattened areas. Okay, so 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but we need to get the third one. So Control-Tab-F, extrude, stop. E again, and we'll just pull this out to about here. Now this does a nasty little thing here, in that it is creating internal geometry because of the way the mirror works. If I switch on clipping, it probably wouldn't be as big of a deal, but we can go ahead and just nuke these out. So X to delete faces, X to delete faces, and there we go. Now we can start reshaping this, so here's how we're going to do it. I did it a little differently this time. Instead of scaling up and down with a whole bunch of extrusions, this time I just made one nice big long extrusion. And we'll hit Control-R and just drop in an edge loop right about here. And now let's just start playing with the edges. So Control-Tab-E, grab this edge here on top, and we'll pull this up. Grab this edge here on bottom, we'll pull this down. That gets kind of a nice side profile. And then we'll pull this out and get a little bit of width. Pull this back. Maybe grab this guy and kind of pull it down a little. See, this kind of modeling is always fun, because it's really what you're doing, in effect, is you're sketching in 3D. I don't do this often. Usually I've got, like reference material and image planes, and in this case I probably should be doing all of those things, but it's just more fun sometimes just to kick back, play with your tools, have a good time.
I totally agree with you, and at the same time I find it quite disturbing not having very nice, clear image planes to work to.
So get them. Nobody's saying you have to model this way, but
No, but on situations where they simply, if it's a production situation, a lot of the times you're not going to have concept art. You're not going to have.
right, you won't have anything else really.
Yeah. I'm
You find that? You don't know.
Well, I was just wondering, it may be down to the fact that generally that's been the case with things that already exist, and consequently you can actually compare the model to the original. Whereas if you were generally working on something from concept art, you couldn't really.
All right. Well, actually, guys, what I'm doing is I'm making an ant. So for those of you who are wondering, or just finally just, I must know, I'm making an ant. Now, it's not the most anatomically correct ant in the world. Really, I'm basing this off of a few very simple precepts. That an ant needs to have 6 legs, it needs to have antennae, and it needs to have maybe some little chompy, chewy things here with some eyeballs. Outside of that, there really is nothing else. Everything else I'm just inferring and having a good time with. Now, if you are the kind of modeler who just can't work that way, if I'm irritating you right now and you're like, oh, but if you make an ant, then you need to start off with the Encyclopedia Britannica, look at the entry on ants, look at all of their diagrammatic breakdowns of the morphology of an ant, and go from there.
See, I've never met anyone like that.
Right. You have never met anyone like that, Gavin.
No, but then I don't have a mirror in this.
Exactly. So basically, if you're Gavin and you need, to go ahead and start with the Encyclopedia Britannica, then that's great. Do that. Me, I'm just going to kind of throw something together to show you guys some tools and some features and having a little bit of fun, okay?
That said, I was just thinking back over your knowledge of anatomy.
Let's use the knife tool. Go ahead, Gavin, please. Share with me. What do you have?
Well, the leg, all the bones of arms and legs and hands and things.
Uh-huh.
I picked up a lot of those from some of your videos.
You may have, and that's very, very cool.
Spidering. Is that mine?
I did the spider in Maya. That was part of the advanced modeling class.
Okay.
That was a long time ago.
Well, I forget which ones go with which.
Oh, I do too. I
just watch all of them.
Okay, so then here I'll hit Control-R, and we'll split this up into 3s. Now, here's the thing. I mean, it's nice being able to do that to get a nice, 3-way split here. So I can put a leg out here, a leg out here, and a leg out here. That's wonderful. I love that. But I don't really need that kind of detail up here, and that is irritating. So, I mean, I can try spreading some of this out. Usually I'll go that route first to see if I can just make it look nice, if it's more spread across the surface. And then if that doesn't immediately work and it's not speaking to me, then often what I'll do is I'll just start merging. So we can merge those. Now, come here, you. And then grab you and merge those. And merge these.
You're kind of thinking into the future.
Well,
it was implicit in what you said about the legs, but it is a fundamental point. Because when it comes down to it, this is what modelling. Welcome to modelling, people.
yeah, well,
Moving verts around and putting them in place to make it do what you want is
well, like,
doing.
and like here, I'm creating these 2 triangles, and that's creating a little bit of pinching, but the ant's body's probably not going to actually deform and flex very much. But then let's say for some reason I'm like, you know what? I don't like the way that turned out at all. I don't want to pinch in 2 places. It'd be nice if I could just pinch in one and maybe get another edge to run down the back. So here is where some of those N-Gon features come in really, really handy. Watch this. We go to Faces, grab these 3 guys, hit X, go ahead and just dissolve these guys out. Now I can get my knife tool and say, you know what? What I probably should have done is just split out to here, and then maybe just split this guy up to here, and there we go, so that now I can switch over to edges, maybe just grab this edge and pull it up a little bit, and maybe grab this edge and pull it out a little bit, and now I've got a slightly more rounded surface. So it's just one of those things where you get to play a little bit. Now, let's see, some other things that I want to do. I could go ahead and do the same thing here. I'm not too stressed about what happens to his underbelly, though. So, I mean, at worst, I could just give him a little bit of rounding down there. Now, let's go to Faces. Hit W. Grab Inset right here. And I really want this to take up more room. So we'll inset that down to about here. And that'll work. Now, let me see how well this works, because this is one of my all-time faves, and it's real easy to forget about how awesome this is, and I hope it'll work well here so I don't look like I'm just kind of, floundering. But if we hit Alt+Shift+S, that's to sphere, and what that'll do is you'll notice that made that into a much nicer shape. So it's not quite as oblong. So here's where it was before, this kind of oblong, sort of this edge is longer than that edge kind of weirdness. But by condensing that over to a sphere with Alt-Shift+S, now it's a nice rectangle. I love that feature. And I can just pull these up a little bit. I could have done an edge slide probably right there, and that might have been a little more efficient, but it's hindsight for you.
You are, for didactic purposes.
For didactic purposes. You just said that? Seriously?
That's what I meant.
All right, no, it's all.
This is my thing with words. This is why I'm like I am with words. There is usually a word in English. We are blessed with a language, an incredible number of closely related things.
I knew I was setting myself up for a lecture.
And, well, see, because you know this.
All right. So here now I'm going to extrude out and continue on with this lesson over Blender that has not as much to do with the English language. So there's my leg. It's the perfect leg. I love this leg. Yeah. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? We'll grab a front view here, and then let's see. Let's do some of this and this. And this. And all I did right there was I just held down the Control key and clicked. And you get those really fast extrusions. That'll get you kind of where you want to go really, really quickly. Now, is it perfect? No, it looks terrible, actually. But, I mean, it gets us kind of started, right? So, let's see, a couple of other things we could do. I'm not going to worry too much about making it angle forward. We'll do that in a minute. Now, again, this is me talking about, thinking into the future. That's what I'm doing. I'm thinking ahead more than anything else. Now, let's do this. Let's grab this edge and this edge. Well, all these edges. In fact, let's grab this little loop here. And I want to bevel these. So here's beveling in a way that has nothing to do with making the edge of a box. I just wanted to take one edge and split it into two edges. And so bevel is perfect for that. And we can do it again. And, see what that's doing? Isn't that great?
It's nice.
And let's see. Then, what would I do next? If I was actually modeling this, I love saying that phrase. I used to say that all the time in modeling on the fly. If I were modeling this. Then, let's see. Let's go to an inset and increase the thickness to about yay. So there. Grab all of these guys, and there is a method to this. There is a reason I'm doing this. It's so that I can squeeze this down and create a little bit of pinching, and then maybe pull these out just a little bit. So basically, I just made a leg segment. So if we get out of here, you have a nice, clean little segment starting to show up. Now, it could use a little bit more cleaning, for sure. So we could, grab this guy and pull him out. And this guy, pull him out, and just keep those from really looking like they're folding over each other too much. Now, I'm not getting a lot of questions here. That could mean that I'm doing an excellent job of explaining my process along the way. But if it doesn't mean that, and if any point along here you're thinking, oh, I wonder why he's doing this, and if you sound like Yoda when you talk like that, please feel free to just pop in a question. And
There's one specific question that I think I lost in the shuffle earlier about what's the hotkey for select all?
A will select all. And then if you want to grab a loop, it's Alt and click on an edge like that. And then we'll do another bevel here. So let's do a little bit of the same stuff that I just did a second ago. And we'll pull this down. And what I need to do probably here is grab this edge and kind of straighten him up a little bit. And we'll grab this guy as well. And we'll do another bevel. And pull him way down as well. Now you see that's creating a little bit of weirdness, you can see there. Because that one, well, not as much as I would like to happen. But we can just kind of fake it, and we could maybe just grab this guy. I mean, it is just modeling. You just pull that back down here.
This is the thing with all these tools.
Yeah.
It's why I kind of harp on that point about, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
Just putting vertices.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all the same stuff.
These programs are just,
Yep.
ways of selecting.
And Muhammad was totally like, you could have used edge slide. Yep, could have used edge slide. Could have used all kinds of stuff. It's just, like here, where earlier I did an inset, I could just insert 2 edge loops at the same time and then scale those down. That's just one of those things you definitely have to get the hang of, is that oftentimes there almost isn't, there isn't always a right tool for the job so much as just the tool that you want to use for the job.
Well, there's almost always at least 2 ways of approaching.
At least 2. Often there's a lot more than that. And just kind of tuck these in, kind of help that segmentation sort of become a little more apparent. And then, of course, we could use these little extra edges to kind of flare it out just a little bit.
I mean, one thing I'll just drop in while you're pushing and pulling, which is that working with a cage like this is great, and you can see where your models are, and you get used to focusing on the smooth surface and moving the other one. But bearing in mind, depending on why you are modelling, if you're planning to use the smoothed version in order to project normals, to create a normal map for the low poly version, you need to pay a bit more attention about where faces are overlapping and what's fogging over other things. I don't know if you've got anything like that.
No, that's a little. No, we don't really need to worry about that at the moment. But you are right. That is just one of those things you do kind of need to be aware of. If you're planning on doing normal mapping stuff, essentially, when you're planning on creating a normal map, you want your cage to be as clean as possible, and you don't want to have a lot of really dramatic changes in direction. Some of the stuff that I'm doing here, you probably wouldn't want to do.
Well, also what I was thinking about was, in order to get the smooth version looking right, you oftentimes ending up crossing out the geometry in the low res cage. Do you see what? If you had a low res character that was resting its chin on its fist, in order to, if the high poly would, it would look like the chin was floating.
Right.
Smoothing. I was thinking sort of a corollary to that.
Oh, well, I would never model a character with it resting his chin on his fist in the first place. I know what you mean. We're good. We're good.
I've been working with Nelson a lot, and he generally
yeah.
the wrong word in a sentence.
Oh, now somebody, Wolf Knightley said, I was not sure. You're supposed to be helping me with questions here, Gav. I was not sure what the rectangle straightening had to do with the sphere thing you were saying. I forgot the right words for that. Well, here, really quickly, let me just demonstrate it like this. What we had was a kind of randomish sort of shape that was a little oblong. What 2Sphere is going to do is take all of the vertices and move them into the position of a theoretical sphere based on their center point. So what happened is that it calculated a center point, it calculated a perfect sphere around that, and then it started pulling these vertices out to that location. Now, two-dimensionally speaking, what is a two-dimensional cross-section of a sphere going to look like? It's going to look like a perfect circle, obviously. So if you take the vertices of this really oblong shape and you pull them out to a sphere, what you end up with is a much nice, if this was a perfect sphere, now this isn't, I hand drew it, okay? You end up with a much cleaner shape. It just pulled those out to a nice, more straightened shape that wasn't quite so oblong and weird looking. And the only reason I did that was so that once I get into extruding out, we end up with something that's a lot more rounded and tube-like, as opposed to having, like a one side that's a little wider than the others, or being kind of oblongly shaped. Oblongly, I like that. Yes.
There was one other question about why yours looks so much smoother than his when you're both set to 3, which I imagine is related to having clicked on the...
Probably having actually set it to smooth. If I get out here, make sure you do hit smooth shading, and that will probably solve that problem for you. Now, we could make the legs a lot more segmented at the end, much more like an ant's legs. I'm not going to worry about that because I'm kind of getting a little bit tight on time here. And I didn't really ever intend on finishing this in class. I just wanted to kind of get things sort of started and get you sort of acquainted with the direction that I would be taking here. But let's do a couple more things real quick. Let's say we take this face and this face, and we'll nuke them. kill those faces. Goodbye. As a matter of fact, just so that it's not quite as visually off-putting. Let's see here. Let's get out of there. Didn't mean to do that. Let's see. No, let's just do it this way. It'll be fine. I'm going to grab some faces. Let's grab these. And this is the plus key, or is it Control plus? I knew it was in there somewhere. I've been having to use a lot of Maya lately. So let's get all the way up to here. And then I want this guy and this guy. I want all of these. Now, watch this. We're going to hit Shift D and pull out a duplicate. And then we'll hit Shift D and pull out a duplicate. And then, let's see here, let's switch back over to vertices. And I'll hit Alt, actually let's grab U2, and Alt-M at last, U and U, Alt-M at last. And grab these guys together. And, oh, get out of there. U, Alt-M at last, U, and U, Alt-M at last, and just close these guys up real quick.
Somebody did point out earlier that I think it's Control+R to repeat last.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've got some legs. So now let's do this. Let's grab all of these guys.
Lawrence did say, I assume at last. Last
Yes.
Means it welds the vertex to the last vertex you clicked.
It did. Alright, now let's see here. Make sure that we set this to connected. So I'm using my proportional editing mode right now. And we could just go ahead and move this to kind of where we want it to be. And then take a look at our proportional size and just pull that up a little bit. That doesn't look so hot. That's okay. Let's go a slightly different route. It's all just modeling anyway. So this time,
Too many birds.
I see him.
I'm trying to avoid being a backseat model.
Oh, you're terrible at it. You may be the worst.
Not that, where I pointed out something that was going to break the model. It was just like, I know how I'd go about doing this.
Yeah, you're just bad at it generally. I mean, it's okay. I still like you. You're a good guy, but you know, you're kind of bad at that. We've all got our our flaws. So we just move this back and then rotate and then tweak about like so. You can also do some things about adjusting for length. So let's go from up here, hit A, B. Grab all these guys, and we'll just, apparently it's decided I wanted to move those straight up, which is bad. And we'll rotate these around. Not quite perfect, but we can clean that up here in just a minute. And we've already got the basics of an ant in place. So really, with this, you've got a great start for modeling some form of insect, which leads me to your homework. Your homework is pretty simple. You will model an insect. It can also be an arachnid if you really want. So something vaguely arachnid-like or insect-like. I don't care how far you want to go with it. If you want to really, really push it, that's fine. If you want to keep it vaguely simple, that's fine too. I'm mostly interested in you exploring some of the things that we have talked about today in terms of topology, in terms of the tools that we've demonstrated. Definitely try creating a few N-Gons and then solving them, cleaning them up into quads and triangles. So, based on our notes, I want your model to have good topology. So essentially, I want it to exhibit all of these things. It should have all quads and triangles when you're done. The flow of topology should be nice and move along the body in a clean manner. All of the normals should be pointed outward. It should be solid. It shouldn't have holes in it. And I shouldn't be able to see any sharp edges. And if you use any smoothing, then sharp edges kind of solve themselves. You don't really have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about anything in terms of animation right now. We're not going to dwell on that. If it doesn't seem to have enough geometry to bend or flex properly when animated, I'm not going to beat you up. If you want to go ahead and pose it, then you can. If you want to just have it kind of in a neutral stance where you might rig it up later, that's fine too. I'll leave that in your very capable hands. You do not have to worry about UVs. You do not have to worry about texturing. In fact, I'd prefer that you didn't. I would rather this just be a solid model so that I can just open it up, take a look at your overall use of geometry, and just decide whether you met the assignment or didn't. So again, very straightforward. Are there any questions of any kind? Anything anybody needs to know or anything else? Now, we are going to be handling homework based on a thread that will be put up. Look for a thread in the MS Lounge. That will have all of your various requirements for getting your Dropbox set up, as well as an overview of what we've put down here. So if you need any further information about the homework, it'll all be specified there. In the meantime, what you will need to do is make sure you set up a free Dropbox account if you haven't already. You will be PMing your Dropbox account information, basically just the email that you use with Dropbox. You'll be PMing that to FatGav. I can. Let me, no, it shouldn't be any different at all, actually. Let me see if I can dig that thread up quick. It is still a sticky, isn't it?
Yeah, the link, if you've got Skype on
I either have Skype or I either don't have Skype or it's buried behind a bunch of windows and I can't easily bring it out. So let's see. Live classes submission steps. This is a sticky thread, and it's something that all of you should read, and read carefully. Please don't just read the orange steps or even just the red steps. Read the whole thing, because it's actually pretty easy to follow. So definitely make sure that you get this taken care of. Now, in your cases, just so you guys all know, FatGav is the person you'll be PMing your account information to. He is going to then share a folder with you, and your submission steps from that point on will essentially just be making sure that your final blend file or whatever we require from you is just in your shared folder so that we can access it. That's it. It will make things a lot easier. If you have questions, you can shoot them to me or you can shoot them to Gavin, and I will help you out, or he will help you out as quickly as we are able. If you guys don't know how to find the PMs, I suppose. If you, I'm not going to open mine up, but once you're logged in, you will have a PM window that you can open up here. And if you click on this, you'll have the ability to send a new PM. So it's all pretty straightforward.
Or you can click on, like there, you can click on Zach and bring up a drop down, which will tell you to, one of the options is send PM.
Really? Oh, here, sure. Sure, yeah. Like we could come over to, actually, if you take a look at this thread, there is already some links, there are some links already set up where you can just click on Gavin Whitlock here, and that will automatically open up a PM window, just to make things nice and easy on you. Now, the due date for homework. The way that I'm going to handle that is essentially it will be due before the second session of the class a week from now, if that makes sense. So this will be due not this coming Thursday, but next Thursday, just before class begins. That basically means that you guys get a week and a couple of days, and the Thursday class gets about a week. Now, the only reason I don't feel the least bit bad about that is that they would have access to watching this video and taking a look at the homework assignment as early as either tonight or tomorrow if they really wanted to. And just to double check dates, actually let's not worry about dates right now. It should be the 28th, but let's just make sure that all of that gets into the thread so I don't have to spend a whole lot of time digging through calendars. But it should be Thursday the 28th, right before the 7 o'clock class starts. Okay, so I think that's everything. Is it not cool to have triangles and quads in the same model? I mean, most modelers get crazy when they see quads and triangles in the same model. I don't think most modelers get crazy about seeing quads and triangles in the same model. I think there are a few elitist people out there who get really upset if you don't follow every single one of a big long list of imaginary rules.
Depends where you put the triangle, I would say.
Yeah, it's
I'm one of the most obsessive people you'll find on it, but there's no problem with triangles. If you look at it and go, yeah, that's where that's either somewhere where you want the triangle specifically for a reason, or it doesn't matter, or there's no other option.
right.
Which is the least horrible.
Either it makes sense for it to be there, or it is someplace that is completely out of the way so that it's not going to get in the way of any kind of deformation or cause any problems later on down the road. And really, I don't believe you're going to be super comfortable with that until probably your second or third full character model that you take on. That's just one of those things that you'll model a lot and you'll start to really get the hang of how that works. And I also won't be too terribly surprised if you don't feel yourself really gelling with that concept until you also take one of your models and rig it up and skin it and try to animate it so you can see what some of those problems are. The more you know of the process, the more the modeling choices that you make are going to make more sense in your head. So just definitely something to be aware of. Like, if you'd like to enter the industry specifically as a modeler, I implore you, I beg you to learn the basics of rigging up and animating a character. Make sure that you've seen that and that you're relatively comfortable doing it. Even if you don't want to, basically ever make a living doing it on a day-by-day basis, make sure that you know how to do it so that you can make more intelligent decisions while you're modeling. So that is everything that I have for everybody tonight. I'm not seeing any new questions rolling in. If you have further questions about the class, please feel free to PM me. And again, I'll help you out as quickly as I'm able. I want to thank you all for attending. I'm very excited about where this class is going to go. And that is it for tonight's class. So thank you all very much and have a good night.